On my birthday, my family handed me what they called a special gift. When I opened the box, I found an eviction notice for the very house I owned. Everyone watched my reaction, expecting me to be shocked or upset. Instead, I simply smiled and said nothing. But on their wedding day, I made sure to return the favor. The eviction notice felt like ice in my hands, its crisp edges cutting through the fading warmth of my birthday celebration. Just moments ago, I had been laughing and surrounded by family, truly believing this was the milestone that would define my best year yet. I am Vivian, and this is the story of how my 30th birthday became the brutal day my own blood betrayed me. My life's work was reduced to a single sheet of legal paper handed to me under the guise of a gift. The betrayal was so calculated that it felt like every smile I'd seen that evening was nothing more than a mask for a knife held behind their backs. "Open it, dear, we are all so excited for you to see what is inside," my mother urged. Her eyes were twinkling with a restless energy that I now realize wasn't joy, but a deep-seated anxiety. The fancy envelope had seemed innocent enough, wrapped in expensive silver paper and finished with a delicate silk bow. We were gathered in the living room of my childhood home, the very place I had spent the last several years painstakingly renovating with my own hands and savings. The room was filled with familiar faces, but the atmosphere had shifted into something clinical and cold. My cousin Sola sat perched on the armrest of the sofa, watching me with an unreadable expression that bordered on predatory. Nearby, my brother Jace stood by the fireplace, his hands shoved deep in his pockets as he stared at the floor, pointedly avoiding my gaze. "Come on, Viv, we haven't got all day," Sola chirped. Her voice was honey-sweet, yet there was an edge to it that should have warned me. I remember thinking how odd it was that she had dressed so formally in a designer suit for a simple family gathering. As I tore open the envelope, the taste of birthday cake still sweet on my tongue, the weight of the document inside made my stomach drop. Notice of eviction stared back at me in bold, unforgiving letters. The room went silent, the festive air replaced by a suffocating tension. "What is this?" My voice came out as a fragile whisper. "Mom? Dad?" My mother's face finally crumpled under the weight of the moment. "Sweetheart," she began, her voice trembling, "we have been trying to find the right time to tell you." I stood up abruptly, the paper shaking in my grip as the reality set in. "Tell me what? That you are kicking me out of my own home? The home I have poured every cent of my savings into? The home I have given my heart to?" Sola cleared her throat and stood up, stepping into the center of the room. "Vivian, be reasonable," she said, smoothing her skirt with practiced calm. "The house was never officially yours. The deed is still in your parents' names, and they have decided it is time for a change." "A change?" I spun to face her, my blood boiling. "What do you even know about this? Why are you even involved in my living situation?" "I am just trying to help the family make the best financial decision," she replied smoothly. "The market is hot right now, and this property is a gold mine." "The market?" I laughed, but the sound was jagged and broken, more like a sob than a release. "This is my home, Sola, not some nameless investment property for you to flip." My brother finally spoke up, his voice low and heavy with guilt. "Viv, maybe we should discuss this privately." "No." I slammed the paper down on the coffee table, making the cake plates rattle and the silver forks clink. "I want answers right now. Mom, Dad, why are you doing this to me?" My father still wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked aged, defeated by a narrative I didn't yet understand. "There have been concerns, Vivian," he muttered. "Concerns about your ability to maintain the property properly. Sola has shown us some very concerning documentation regarding the state of the house." "Documentation?" I felt like I was drowning in a sea of lies. What documentation could she possibly have? "I have done nothing but improve this place. Look around you. New hardwood floors, an updated kitchen, restored Victorian details that I spent months researching. I did all of that. With questionable contractors." Sola interjected softly, her tone dripping with fake sympathy. "And then there are the noise complaints from the neighbors, not to mention the unauthorized modifications you made without permits." "That is absolutely false." My voice cracked with the force of my indignation. I turned to my best friend, Paisley, who had been standing frozen in the corner of the room. "Paisley, tell them. You've been here through every single renovation. You know the truth." Paisley stepped forward, her face fierce with loyalty. "Everything Vivian has done has been by the book," she told my parents. "I have seen the permits myself. She has worked herself to the bone for this house. But my family's expressions remained stony and unchanged. They had been fed a different story, one carefully crafted to make me look unstable. My mother reached out for my hand, her touch feeling like a brand. "Sweetie, you have 30 days to vacate." I jerked away from her, my heart hammering against my ribs. 30 days to leave my home? On my birthday? The room started spinning as the betrayal took root. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked, looking from my parents to Sulla. Sulla straightened her blazer, looking every bit the professional executioner. "I think we should all just calm down and discuss this rationally," she said. "The decision has been made, Vivian. Fighting it will only make things harder for everyone involved." Looking at her face, that perfectly composed mask of false concern, something finally clicked. This wasn't a sudden family decision. This was a calculated, long-term hit. The formal outfit, the mysterious documentation, the way she had positioned herself as the voice of reason while my parents stayed silent, it was all a setup. "Get out," I whispered. Then, when no one moved, I shouted it. "Everyone, get out of my house." "Vivian," my mother started, her eyes welling with tears, but I wouldn't hear it. They filed out one by one, a parade of shadows leaving me in the ruins of my life. Only Paisley stayed behind. As the front door closed, I collapsed onto the couch, the eviction notice mocking me from the table. Paisley sat beside me, wrapping a supportive arm around my shoulders. "This isn't over, Viv," she promised. "Something is not right here, and we are going to figure out exactly what Sulla is up to." I wiped my eyes, the initial shock finally being replaced by a cold, hard anger. "You're right," I said, my voice steadying. "Sulla is behind this. She has wanted this house ever since we were children." I stood up, a new sense of determination flooding through me. "And I am going to prove it." I looked around at my beloved home, at the walls I had painted, the fixtures I had restored, and the memories I had built. I made a promise to myself right then. This would not be the last birthday I celebrated here. Not if I had anything to say about it. The morning after the disaster, I sat at my kitchen counter staring at my phone. I had 17 missed calls from my mother and 5 from Jace. There was nothing from Sulla, of course. She had delivered her blow and was likely waiting for the dust to settle. "You need to eat something," Paisley said, sliding a plate of toast in front of me. She had stayed the night, sleeping on the couch just like we used to do back in college. "You can't fight a war on an empty stomach." I pushed the plate away, my mind racing too fast for hunger. "I can't eat. I need to figure out what lies Sulla has been feeding my parents." My hands shook as I pulled up my mother's contact information. "I'm calling her," I announced. "Put it on speaker," Paisley said, settling in beside me. My mother answered on the first ring, her voice frantic. "Vivian, thank goodness. We have been so worried." "Save it, Mom," I cut her off. "I want to know exactly what Sulla has been saying about me." There was a heavy sigh that crackled through the speaker. "Honey, it isn't just what she said. She showed us documentation of unauthorized construction and official complaints from the neighborhood association." "That is impossible." I slammed my hand on the counter. "I have every permit and every approval right here in my files." "Who specifically complained?" "Well, I don't have the actual complaints in front of me," my mother stammered. "Sulla handled all of that." "Of course she did," I laughed bitterly. "And did you even bother to verify any of it? Did you think to ask me before ambushing me on my birthday?" Silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable. "Sulla said you would deny everything," my mother finally replied, her voice sounding small and distant. "She said you have been struggling financially and that you've been cutting corners to keep the house afloat." "I want copies of everything," I demanded. "Every document, every complaint, everything Sulla showed you. I want it today." "Vivian, please try to understand." "No, you understand. That house is my life. I have put every penny I have into it, and I am not leaving without a fight." I hung up before she could respond, my chest heaving. Paisley squeezed my shoulder. "That's the spirit. Now, what's the move?" "Now, we gather evidence," I said, grabbing my laptop. "I need proof that Sulla is a liar." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from my brother. "Meet me at Carlos Coffee in 30. Need to talk." 20 minutes later, I walked into the cafe and spotted Jace in our usual corner booth. His face was drawn and he looked incredibly guilty. "You knew," I accused, sliding into the seat across from him. "You knew what they were planning." Jace ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. "I found out yesterday morning. Mom and Dad swore me to secrecy. They said Sulla had proof you were in trouble." And you believed her? I asked, hurt. Of course not, he leaned forward, lowering his voice. Look, something weird is going on. Last week, I overheard Sulla on the phone talking about property values and development opportunities in this neighborhood. My heart stopped. Development opportunities? Yeah, and get this. Her fiancé, Valentine, his family owns that new luxury condo complex downtown. The pieces began to fall into place with sickening precision. Our street was one of the last historic areas in town, prime for redevelopment. My house sat on the largest lot on the block. She wants to sell it to developers, I whispered. That is why she's doing this. There is more, Jace said. I did some digging. Sulla has been meeting with the City Planning Commission, and guess who else attended those meetings? Mom and Dad? He nodded. They think they are protecting you from financial ruin, but Sulla is playing them. She has convinced them that selling the house is the only way to save you from yourself. My phone buzzed again, an email from my mother with several attachments. I opened them, scanning the documents quickly. Jace, look at these. The letterhead is wrong, and the permit numbers don't match my records. She forged these. Keep your voice down, Jace warned, glancing around the cafe. Sulla has friends everywhere. I don't care. This is proof she is lying. I stood up, feeling energized for the first time since the party. I need to go show Mom and Dad right now. Wait, Jace grabbed my wrist, pulling me back down. Sulla's wedding to Valentine is in 2 weeks. Everyone will be there, family, friends, business associates. If you are going to expose her, that is your chance to do it properly and publicly. I sank back into my seat, my mind racing. 2 weeks to gather evidence. 2 weeks to prove she is trying to steal my home for her fiancé's company. I'll help you, Jace said firmly. And so will Paisley. But we have to be smart about this. I nodded, determination finally replacing my despair. Sulla thinks she has won, that I will just roll over and accept this eviction. She has no idea what I am capable of. Walking home, I called Paisley. Hey, remember that friend of yours who works at the city planning office? We need to talk to her right now. The game was on, and this time, I was playing to win. The planning office smelled of stale coffee and printer ink. Paisley's friend, Amanda, pulled another heavy file from the cabinet and added it to the growing stack on her desk. These are all the development proposals for your neighborhood from the past 6 months, she said, keeping her voice low. Including 3 from Valum Development Group. Valentine's company, I muttered, flipping through the pages. My hands froze on a familiar sketch. This is my house. Paisley leaned over my shoulder. Look at the date, Viv. This was filed 2 months ago, I said, the anger building in my throat. This was started long before the eviction notice. Amanda glanced nervously at the door. There is something else. These signatures here, she pointed to the bottom of a document. Your parents' names are on here, authorizing the preliminary survey. My stomach lurched. They have been planning this for months behind my back. Paisley grabbed my arm, pointing to another name. Look who notarized it. The name jumped off the page, Marcus Quinn. Sulla's father. That sneaky little. I stopped as footsteps echoed in the hallway. Amanda quickly gathered the files, shoving them back into the cabinet. I have copies at my desk, she whispered. I will email them to you tonight. We barely made it out before someone entered the office. In the parking lot, I leaned against my car, trying to steady my breathing. We need to talk to Valentine, Paisley said. Maybe he doesn't know the extent of what Sulla is doing. He has to know, I countered. His company filed the proposals. My phone rang again. It was Jace. Sis, you need to get to Mom and Dad's house right now. What's wrong? Sulla is here with some contractor, talking about renovation plans. They're acting like they already own the place. I was already in my car and starting the engine. I'm coming. 15 minutes later, I stormed through my parents' front door. Sulla's voice drifted from the kitchen, smooth as honey. The whole street will benefit from the modernization. Property values will soar. Over my dead body, I announced, stepping into the room and making everyone jump. Sulla recovered first, her smile never wavering, though her eyes were cold. Vivian, we were just discussing the neighborhood's future. You mean your future, I snapped. Yours and your fiancé's. I slapped the development proposals onto the kitchen table. When were you going to tell everyone about Valentine's plans? My mother's face went pale. What is she talking about, Sulla? Don't listen to her, Sulla said quickly. She is just upset about the eviction and making things up. Show them. I demanded. Show them the real reason you want my house. The contractor cleared his throat awkwardly. I should probably go. Stay, Sulla commanded, her voice turning sharp. Vivian is just causing drama as usual. She is always so emotional about everything. Emotional? I laughed harshly. You forged legal documents, Sulla. You lied to my parents and manipulated them. You are trying to steal my home for your fiancé's development project. That is enough. My father shouted, finally standing up. Sulla has been nothing but helpful during this transition. Helpful? I grabbed the proposals and shoved them in front of him. Look at the dates. Look at the signatures. She has been planning this for months. My mother picked up the papers with trembling hands. These aren't the documents you showed us, Sulla. Because those were fakes. I cut in. These are official copies from the city planning office. For the first time, Sulla's composure cracked. You went through official records? I found everything, I told her. The fake complaints, the forged permits, the secret development plans. It is all right here. The contractor stood up again. Miss Shelton, if there is some kind of legal issue here, I can't be involved. There is no issue, Sulla said through gritted teeth. Everything is fine. My phone buzzed, an email from Amanda with the promised documents. I held up my phone triumphantly. Want to see the proof? I'm sending it to your tablets right now. Sulla's face hardened into a mask of pure spite. You have no idea what you are doing, Vivian. You have no idea who you are dealing with. No, you have no idea who you are dealing with, I retorted. I turned to my parents. Check your emails. I am sending you every lie, every manipulation, and every record of every secret meeting with Valum Development. Sulla, my mother's voice was small and broken. Is this true? But Sulla was already heading for the door, the contractor trailing behind her. At the threshold, she turned back, her eyes narrow and full of venom. This isn't over, Vivian. Not by a long shot. After she left, a heavy silence filled the kitchen. My father stared at the documents, his face ashen. We should have asked you, he finally admitted. We should have verified. Yes, you should have, I said, gathering my papers. But now you know the truth. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I left them there, surrounded by the evidence of their own misplaced trust. Once I was in my car, I called Paisley. Phase 1 is complete, I told her. Now, we go after Valentine. Finding him proved easier than I expected. He was at his usual lunch spot, a trendy cafe downtown, sitting with his sister Leah. I smoothed my blazer and approached their table, Paisley following close behind. Mind if we join you? I asked, not waiting for an answer before sliding into an empty chair. Valentine's fork clattered against his plate. Vivian? What are you doing here? Funny story, I said, leaning in. I was just at the city planning office looking at some very interesting documents regarding my house. Leah's eyes narrowed. Your house? The Victorian that Sulla mentioned? The very same one your brother's company plans to demolish, I said, watching Valentine's face carefully. Demolish? Leah turned to her brother. Val, what is she talking about? Valentine dabbed his mouth with a napkin, trying to maintain his cool. This isn't the place for this discussion. It is exactly the place, I interrupted, pulling out the development proposals. Your company filed these 2 months ago. That was before the eviction notice and before all of Sulla's lies to my parents. Leah snatched the papers, her face darkening as she read. You are planning to tear down the entire street? To replace it with condos? It is a sound business decision, Valentine defended himself, though I caught the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. The neighborhood is undervalued. It is my home. I cut in. And Sulla has been manipulating my family and forging documents to get it for you. Paisley leaned forward. They were only willing to sell because Sulla showed them forged papers claiming Vivian was mismanaging the property. She lied to everyone, including you, probably. Leah pushed her plate away, disgust evident on her face. Is this why you are rushing the wedding, Val? To close this deal before anyone finds out? The timing is convenient, he admitted, his voice trailing off. Convenient? I laughed bitterly. You are destroying people's lives and their history for a profit. Progress requires sacrifice, Valentine started, but Leah cut him off. No, this requires deception, and I won't be a part of it. She stood up, gathering her things. Count me out of the wedding party. Leah, wait. Valentine called after her, but she was already storming out of the cafe. I smiled sweetly at the growing tension. Trouble in paradise? "You have no right to interfere in my business dealings," he hissed, his composure finally slipping. "And you have no right to my house," I countered. "By the way, I have already sent copies of everything to the City Ethics Board. They are very interested in how Valum obtained those preliminary approvals." The color drained from his face as he realized I wasn't bluffing. I dropped my lawyer's business card on the table and walked out. Outside, Leah was waiting. "I want to help," she said. I hesitated, asking why I should trust her. "Because I have watched Sulla manipulate my brother for months, and I have seen how she operates." Leah's eyes flashed with anger. "And because I have access to Val's internal files." This was the breakthrough we needed. Leah showed me emails dating back 6 months, detailing their scheme to pressure my parents and fast-track the development. The next morning, I was jolted awake by the sound of breaking glass. A brick had been thrown through my front window with a note, "Final warning." I called the police, but they offered little help without proof of who threw it. My brother Jace and Paisley arrived to help me board up the window, and we headed to my parents' house. After seeing the evidence, my parents were devastated. "We have been such fools," my mother whispered. They finally saw how Sulla had played on their fears and forged the documentation. Suddenly, Leah called for an emergency meeting. "Sulla knows I helped you," she told me, trembling. "She's threatening to ruin my career by revealing a mistake from my past." I looked her in the eye. "Sometimes you have to risk everything to do the right thing." Leah straightened up, her resolve returning. She revealed that Valentine was moving the timeline up to close the deal right after the wedding. The day before the rehearsal dinner, my attorney Sarah confirmed the evidence was damning. But then another threat came from Sulla, mentioning a college mistake in Miami. I ignored it and focused on the plan. Later, Leah showed me security footage of Sulla's father admitting to forging notary stamps. When I returned home, I found my house had been broken into. Every wall I had restored was marked with a red X for demolition. That night, my mother left a package on my porch, my grandmother's antique locket. Inside was a photo of her in front of the house. I felt her strength. The next evening, at the rehearsal dinner, Sulla held court in white, oblivious to the storm approaching. When it was time for toasts, I stood up and took the floor. "I'm just going to share some interesting documents," I announced as Sarah distributed folders to the investors. I exposed the emails, the forged permits, and the father's involvement in the fraud. "You're ruining everything," Sulla shrieked, but Jace was already handing out more copies. Valentine looked at the evidence in horror, realizing Sulla had lied to him too. I then played the security footage of her admitting the deal wouldn't matter after tonight. The room exploded in chaos as the truth finally took center stage. "What happens after dinner?" Valentine's voice cut through the silence, and finally, Sulla's father broke. "The demolition crew is scheduled for midnight," he admitted. A collective gasp filled the room. "You are going to destroy my home tonight," I whispered, my voice cracking with horror. "While I was supposed to be celebrating your wedding, you were planning to bulldoze my life." The room erupted. Investors fled, board members huddled in panic, and the development deal was declared dead on arrival. "The wedding is off," Valentine announced coldly. Sulla stood frozen, her curated world crumbling into dust. The police arrived shortly after, and as the handcuffs clicked, her facade vanished entirely. "The house is yours, Vivian," my father said, pulling me into a fierce hug. It always was. Weeks later, the morning sun felt different, warm, and earned. The headlines told the story. Valum Development was under investigation, and Sulla was facing charges for fraud and conspiracy. My parents arrived at my porch not with lawyers, but with boxes from the attic, my grandmother's journals, old recipes, and the original photos of her buying the house. Even Valentine showed up with Jace, carrying paint cans and tools to help repair the red X's they had once marked for destruction. As my neighbors gathered for a potluck on the lawn, the air filled with the scent of jasmine and the sound of laughter. I touched my grandmother's locket, feeling a deep sense of peace. The battle for the walls was over, but the story of the home was just beginning. This was my victory, my legacy, and finally my peace.